Good morning. I'll tell you a little bit about myself first. My name is Aleisha. I just recently became Aleisha Wilson, formerly Aleisha Sheridan. I am a speech pathologist by trade. So I worked in the hospitals. I worked in private practices in Lexington, Kentucky. But when my children were little, my daughter was one, and I still didn't have my second, I moved back to Western Kentucky. And so when I moved back to Western Kentucky, I decided that I didn't want to work as much. I wanted to be mom. So I took a job in the school districts thinking that I would have a school schedule, which I thought meant summers off, done every day by 2:30. That is not how that worked. I was working day in, day out, going home, cutting things, making lesson plans, doing all of those kinds of things, but serving as a speech pathologist. Then I worked as a special ed consultant for about 5 years. My passion is children with special needs. So working and making sure that as a speech pathologist, you work birth to death. So I worked with the older people in the nursing homes or assisted living homes, those types of things. I loved it. I worked in the hospitals where I made the decisions. I recommended to the doctors if they needed a G tube or a J tube or anything like that. I went from that to hoping that the diaper got changed on the child when I got to the school district. So a lot of a shift that happened there. I absolutely loved my work. When I was serving as special ed consultant for the school district, we had a new superintendent come in town. So Dr. Ritchie came to town. He was an outsider. You know, I'm in Henderson. Let's think about that. I was in Henderson. So a small town, and somebody from a big city comes in, it's going to change the district, going to change the school district. You all know where I'm at. It's like, here we go. What's he going to come up with kind of thing? Well, one of his standpoints that he had was, I want to open an early learning center for children that are 3 or 4 years of age for every child in the school district. I know what the investment in early learning will be for the kids graduating. I won't be here whenever that happens. I'll be gone. I'll either be passed away or I'll be in another school district. I said, okay, Dr. Ritchie. But he said, I want you to head the task force. I want you to be able to build this center. I want you to have all the input on the intentionality behind it. But you have to bring 8 preschool centers in the elementary schools underneath one roof and create a culture of harmony that's there. And I want you to convince this community that they want this because it's not funded by the state. It's not mandatory by the state, but I'm going to build a $10 million facility. Go tell them. I thought, oh, okay. I'll go tell them. And I did. But I spent a lot of time. I learned how to play Phase 10 in the courtyard where they were doing petitions against it. With the older people to explain because they wanted the mamas to raise the babies, that they didn't need to start school till they were 6, and this needed to be a parent responsibility. So it was like, okay, parents parent the way they were parented. They raise their children. Their value of education is where they were growing up. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but you know what you know, right? Okay, so I did that. I had become a principal. So now that I'm a speech path, but now I've converted to being a principal, the hardest job I've ever had in my entire life. You have to please the people above you. You have to please the staff. You deal with the kids every day and the families that come in mad every day. So it was a loving challenge that I experienced, and it grew me greatly. We had 635 in Henderson. There are 635 live births on average a year. 480 of those children attend Thelma B. Johnson Early Learning Center. Okay, so the majority. Then we have some that attend the parochial schools, and then a handful that never get anything until they enter the kindergarten doors. Okay, so in Vanderburgh County, where you all are residing right now, where I reside currently, you have 2,700 children that are 4 years of age that will be entering the school districts in the fall, or just entered this fall. Their experiences up until kindergarten are so varied, and you all see that. You all know the world that we probably grew up in is not the world that they grew up in. And some of you may have had similar experiences. But there's a drastic difference in these children who have never had any kind of experience and exposure beforehand. In the state of Indiana, for those of you who are in Kentucky, Indiana is vastly different in their early childhood setup. Okay, so the state in Kentucky has a different has a different way of looking at early childhood than Indiana does. It's pretty tough over here in Indiana to get the ball moving on some things, right? Yeah, and so we're looking at, we want affordability for every child, we want access for every child, but we want quality. And I want to change it from babysitting mentality to early learning. They know on my staff, daycare is a dirty word. We do not say daycare. It is about early learning. I don't want to help a facility open up unless they've considered being an early learning facility. Okay, so let me give you some reasons why all of that. Who knows when their child says their first word? Typically, what age does a child say their first word? 1 year. A year old. Now, before that, bless everybody's heart, all the daddies in the room, I hate to burst your bubble, but they will say, before that, I heard somebody say some months, they will say, da, 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 da. And the daddies go, oh, they're saying daddy. They said daddy before mama. Look at that, daddy, daddy, da, 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 da. That's called reduplicated babbling, and that's just something that comes out first. The next thing that comes is mama, 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 mama. Now, that has a little bit more intentionality to it, but again, it's reduplicated babbling with a nasal piece that's added to it. They say their true first word around a year of age. They understand 1,200 words before they utter their first word. So everything you're saying, the reading that you're doing to them, everything that you're building up to that first word, they're soaking it in. They're little sponges. That 90% of the brain growth happens before the age of 6. So before they start kindergarten, formalized education, 90% of their brain has grown. Then it starts pruning. It takes away the things that we don't practice. So whenever you're talking back and forth to your child, who has ever heard Russian? You know how hard it sounds? There's something called a glottal stop. So when they talk, they use a lot in their sounds. If you listen to a baby who's playing before they say their first word, you will hear them go, but it disappears because as the adults in their lives, we don't make that sound back to them. So they just take it away. In Russia, they're practicing with their babies saying that sound, and it sticks, and it stays. Again, sponges, but they've got to make room in that brain, so they take away the things that aren't there. A toddler, who wears a Fitbit or a watch that measures how many steps they take? All right. What is a typical goal for a day if you're doing good? You raise your hand. How many steps a day? 10,000 steps. I did not plan this. 10,000 steps for her day. On average, a toddler takes 176 steps a minute. In 1 hour, they have made 10,000 steps. You all believe it. Tara's laughing because she's like, yeah, I'm chasing that fool all the way around the room. Yeah, okay. Then, you know how many, a toddler also learns one new word every 2 hours they're awake. So a 1 to 2 year old learns one new, so that amount of exposure, what they're hearing, they're learning and picking up. Let's see, numbers are language. A 4-year-old, you all love this one too. A 4-year-old asks approximately 437 questions a day. Those of you working in those classrooms, you know exactly. So why is all of this important? These are great statistics. This is to show you the value of what you're investing early on. You're setting the stage for the rest of their lives. I cried every single day until the 4th grade. Every single day. But it was because I did not have a good kindergarten experience. I grew up in a country area surrounded by 3 cornfields and 1 tobacco field and a stripper pit on the other side. My closest neighbor was 80 years old, and he was a mile away. My exposure consisted of my mother, my dad at work, and my 2 sisters. But both of mine were my dad was a high school teacher, when he started his career path. So his mindset, my mother went back and got her nursing degree when the youngest one got in school. They were both education focused and understood the importance of wrapping around and reading to us. We went to the library once a week and we got to pick out 3 books. 3 books. Do you know how excited I was that day we got to go to the library? That's where I learned how to put on makeup through a book. That's where I learned my passion for gymnastics. Well, my dad had me out in the yard doing gymnastics, but guess what's on my bucket list? Meeting Nadia Comaneci. Does anybody in here know who Nadia Comaneci? Yes. Okay, so she was before Mary Lou Retton. I'm dating myself because y'all are going, I don't know, Simone Biles, you know? Okay, so these are her predecessors. Nadia Comaneci was the first Russian at 14 to win gold in all 4 gymnastic areas. She's still alive and living in Oklahoma, and I found where she lives, so I've been stalking her a little bit. For those who know me and love my travel passions, it's on the list. So when I get to Oklahoma, if I have to be bailed out because I've knocked on her and Bart Connor's door, I just had to meet her because of the book I read when I was little. It opened up my world to take me different places. So the value of reading and investment early on is so important. We do lots of trainings for our families. We do lots of circling around. Again, I'll go back to that. We parent the way we were parented. My parents were young when they had me. They were 19 and 20 whenever they had me. They hate when I say this because I do not do it if they're in the room, but I was an oopsie. And so that was a big thing if you live in the country and you're an oopsie and you're like, oh, you know, kind of thing. So they hurried up and got married. They've been married for 52 years. They're now traveling the country, and they left today. This is going to be funny, the text messages I get today. But my parents yelled. They're parenting the way that they parented. So we lived in the country. It was nothing for me to get yelled at, spanked, all of those kinds of things. But it wasn't out of anger. It was out of a trigger response kind of thing, and that's what happened to them when they were little. And so I turned out pretty good. Both my sisters turned out pretty good. But I heard my daughter one day in the bathtub yelling and pointing her finger at her baby doll. And I thought, wonder where she learned that. I wanted to blame it on my ex-husband. That's not where she got it. It was from me. And at the same time, our staff was going through a training on conscious discipline, on how we regulate ourselves when we're dealing with others. And I learned my triggers that caused me to yell at my 4-year-old that didn't do anything wrong other than being a 4-year-old. So I had to start regulating myself and figuring out what that was. So I learned how to do this. I used it with my staff. I used it with my coworkers. I used it with my kids. It was more organic than, the book says do this now. It was more of an organic, I'm regulating myself, I'm breathing, I'm taking these things in. My kids, fast forward, my kids are 16 and 12 when I take the job that I'm currently in. I'd been at the school district for 15 plus years. I absolutely loved what I did. I took a risk when I stepped out to take this job. I was asked. I did not go looking for a job. That's how happy I was in that, where I was, where Miss Ginger is now. Ginger was my successor. So whenever I came home, I cried every single day on the way home. I had no idea what it meant to be a nonprofit. And I was like, what have I done? But I had a 16-year-old and a 12-year-old at home. I had to be mom. So that 45-minute drive home, I'm cleaning up. I'm thinking I'm hiding everything. And it's been about 2 or 3 months into the job, and the garage door opens. And I'm pulling into the garage, and the second door that gets you into the house? There's a poster on it. It's about the size of those, and there's handprints all over it that seem to be about my child's things, handprints. And I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking, And I get closer, and it says, welcome home. This is your safe place. We love you here. We can't wait to give you a hug. If I didn't do anything right as a parent, that is one of the things I will take home that they will do differently with their children. We all lose it. We all yell sometimes. We all, they're like, yeah, Mommy, you still yelled. Yeah, that still happened as we were growing up. But that I have framed and hanging on my wall at home, because that to me is parenthood. That to me is being able to raising 2 children to become adults. I went back. I told you I cried every day of the 4th grade. My kindergarten teacher, I didn't take naps. Surprise. You don't let me drink coffee, I'll be on the ceiling. I mean, I've got too much energy stored up every day, all day. So I didn't nap, which my mother said, I don't know why I had a second child after you. And, yeah, it was bad. But the teacher I had in kindergarten, it was half day and you took a nap in kindergarten. She told me that she would spank me if I didn't lay down. What she didn't know is that I was having nightmares every single night and sleeping in my parents' bedroom floor every single night. So to close my eyes was scary. But she didn't care about that because that was her time to get her break for the day. And so she needed me to lay still. She didn't give me a book. She didn't do anything like that. So my nephew had her for kindergarten. I went and called my sister. I said, homeschool him. Homeschool him. He's got, and I almost said her name. But I said, that woman is mean. She is mean, mean, mean. Now, as an adult, if I'd went back and met her, I probably would have had it. But what I'm trying to exemplify there is that we make impressions on these children. When we have them at whatever age we have them, our relationship with them makes a difference. Okay, so I was asked to talk a little bit about kindergarten readiness. There's something called in KRA that the state of Indiana does. In Kentucky, they use the Brigance. But it is a screener. Both of these things are screeners. The KRA just looks at a total site and how they're doing and provides professional development around that. The Brigance will give you information, but what the Brigance does is it's a screenshot. And there's 13 questions on it, and guess what? You can teach to the test. We decided we were going to help out when the state of Kentucky adopted it. We made all these videos, tons of videos about how to help your child count. Kids don't know their phone numbers anymore. It's one of the questions that's on the Brigance. They don't know. They're a contact in the phone. I don't know. I know one phone number of somebody. That's it. I don't know my mother's. I don't know my kids. It's a name in there. So we knew we were going to have to do something to help them understand how to recite their phone number and address. And my kids moved 6 times before 1st grade. So they didn't know their address. I wasn't going to teach it before 1st grade, but that's one of the questions on the kindergarten readiness piece, okay? So we had the videos created, and Miss Pat dressed up with Pete the cat and went around town and talked about, I'm at the library. My name is Miss Pat. I'm 47 years old, and my address is blah, 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 blah. Then we went to Subway, and Miss Pat repeated the same information. And then we went over to, I don't know, I guess it was a Sureway. But there were several places in town that Miss Pat told their address and then repeated hers. You have no idea how many kids had Miss Pat's address when asked what their address was. It was like, wow, what an epic fail there, you know. But, again, we have to think about what might happen whenever we plan and do some things. Whenever we talk about kindergarten readiness, we talk about how do we get the kids ready for school. So kids come into these early learning programs, and they start right here. Then the kindergarten readiness scale says, oh, here's kindergarten ready. Now, they've started over here, and we're like, yes, we're going to kill it in early childhood. We're going to teach them everything they need to do so that in 1 year, maybe 2 years, sometimes 3 years, we get them to school ready. That's our goal, get them school ready. And then they don't make it to school ready. What they do is they go from here, and they move, and they truck, and they close some gaps, and they get right here. Wow, look at all this growth. But when it looks on paper, here's school ready. How are we telling this story? Where is this being captured? Where is if you that are functioning in this field are catching this amount of growth? That's what we're doing as building blocks. We're giving the tools that it takes to get them to this place and how to collect the data in order to make sure that we can tell the story of each individual child and where they are. How we can tell them, little Johnny has increased on all of these things in social emotional, self-help, cognition, language, and gross motor. In those 5 areas. And we concentrate on if little Johnny is really struggling in math, but he is killing it in reading. When he starts kindergarten, you don't want to put him in special ed because he isn't making the school readiness scores and he didn't score high. He's struggling in math. Focus on math. When the teacher's teaching to the middle, the rest of the time, the math is where he needs his help before he gets going. So that's that intentional work that we're doing. We help with affordability. We help with the vouchers of the kids to get into childcare. We help with accessibility. We help find the spots that there's available for them. Our push that I implore upon you guys is around this quality piece, this piece where we're saying we have to be intentional with what we're doing. The work that we're doing, I have no idea how long I'm at the end. Okay, so the work that we're doing is composed of making sure there's good business practices, to make sure that we're talking about the curriculum and the assessment that's going on. We're talking about health and nutrition. You know, we have pretty close to the highest obesity rate around Midwest in this area. Then we work on environment. Is the environment set up the way it should be? The piece that you all can play into that is partnering with us to make sure we get them in locations that have these high-quality early learning experiences and partner with us there. But it's the fifth piece that I see a lot of your hearts focused on, and when you're talking here, is on the family engagement. So there's very intentional ways to do family engagement, and I'm going to give you, so the curriculum we'll use is creative curriculum, but there's math right from the start and reading right from the start. We do family engagement trainings around this because we can't train every family, but we can give you all the tools to be able to turn around and train the families and be very intentional about not having spaghetti and bouncy houses so you can get them there. Once you get them there, what do you do with them? You know, at Thelma B, they got mad at me because I wouldn't let them have parties during the day. But we had like a Saturday fall festival. We had over 600 people show up for our first family night. And in the teachers had to do their own things. And one of the things that they did, just to kind of do examples of intentionality, they had 3 apples to taste, a red one, a yellow one, and a green one. And then they had die cuts beside them. And so they would take a taste of the apple, the children would, and then they'd pick out which one they liked best, grab their die cut, and there was this huge chart on the wall. And 600 people put which favorite apple was theirs. They were graphing their early childhood, and they're graphing on the wall. But guess what else happened? We had stories that went with it. The parents saw, oh, I'm graphing. Look, I can teach my child. We can do this at home. We had 10 apples that were a foot high, each apple on the wall, and we wanted the kids to say how many apples high they were. The parents wanted to tell how high they were. They were, oh, I'm 5 apples, I'm 6 apples, you know, that kind of thing. Again, it was fun, it was intentional, it was engaging, but we could tie it back to the predecessor to some of the other skills that they would need when they started kindergarten. The last thing that I'm going to give you, I know I'm trying to stay on time because they'll all kill me. They're like, you all did that? You started her? Really? Kentucky has the best school readiness definition, in my opinion. It's a pentagon that talks about the whole child. So it talks about health and physical well-being, social and emotional development, general knowledge and mathematics, approaches to learning, and language and communication develop. Then you will see, after you get these, is the little bit of extension out of there. That's what families and parents can do in general everyday activities to help in those areas. So I'm going to leave you with, I'm always here. We've got great partnerships with all of the groups that are here. So Chris and I work together. Jeremy and I work together. I haven't met you. I met you today, so we'll be working together in the future. But know that we're here as an agency. We can't do everything. It takes the team to do it. It takes you guys to do it. We are not in this to say, oh, building blocks did. We're here to say, oh, my gosh, we're able to work with Potter's Wheel. We're able to work with Dream Center. We want to be part of your team. So with that, you'll hear Homer today, who's a little bit of a data nerd, but he will come in this afternoon and talk a lot more about that pipeline of true impact in this world of raising our kids and our families. Thank you for having me today.